All right, the time is 11 o'clock. We're going to go ahead and get things started today. I'd like to welcome everybody. We've got several people tuning in from all over the world, and it's a pleasure for us to be presenting lots or land ownership title structure today. This is something that we've been working on at Farmfolio for quite a while. And it's been really 4 years in the making with this project. So we're super excited about it. We've got a great group of panelists with us today. Oscar obviously is joining us from Lime Road. He's going back and forth around Bogota and Manizales and Monteria today. So and we also have Peter Badger and Karen Williams, who are going to be very integral in the LOTS program, which I'm going to get into and explain in today's meeting. But I really want to give a little bit of a backstory for anyone new joining us that's not been familiar with Farmfolio or any of our projects over these last several years. We have, over the last 4 years, developed projects in Colombia, throughout the Colombian region in coconuts, which we're going to talk about today, as well as in the lime business and packing facilities. We have a sawmill that we've developed, as well as a pineapple farm in Panama. And, historically, we have been working primarily developing private equity structures, 506C, Regulation D private placements. And when we set out the goal of Farmfolio before we started, really the whole idea behind Farmfolio was really to develop an asset class for everyday people to be able to invest. Now, many of you are probably familiar with private equity, and it's pretty restrictive over who can invest in that type of asset. It's typically restricted only to accredited investors. And, we wanted to create something that was more of a hard asset, tangible asset in the beginning, but we needed to build the infrastructure first. And by building the infrastructure, we mean building the team, building the distribution channels, the local operational structures. So many different things have to go into running a successful agriculture business. And that's primarily why you only see multinational type investors going into this, or really institutional investors. So, we have developed that infrastructure over the last 4 years, and we are now ready to roll out this tangible asset in the form of land ownership titles, which essentially is direct land ownership on pre-developed agriculture property. And today we're going to be talking about Pietrasanta. El Principio is going to be the first lot offering. And this project, Pietrasanta as a global farm, was really developed in 2016. So we've been developing this for some time. We set up a private equity structure to fund this. We've put a little over $5 million into the development of this property. And we are now ready to come to harvest on this section, which is El Principio. We're coming into the first harvest season, which we're going to talk about. But, this project is the perfect opportunity for us to create this subdivision model, which is really what this is. We're bringing a traditional real estate development model to this. We have built, if you're to relate this to traditional real estate, we have built the roads, we have built the bridges, we've put everything in place now to be able to have the subdivision available, which is what this lots structure is. We have subdivided this Principio lot, and we are now going to be able to offer real estate opportunities for people looking for cash flowing real estate. And we're going to be talking about that in summary, but we have really positioned ourselves, as the developer of this property. And we have been developing this project as well as several others, but we as we were getting ready to launch the land ownership title structure, we started to think we needed to start building a model that was more similar to traditional real estate, that has a typical sales and distribution model like real estate. And as we were looking to start partnering with agents or brokers to be able to sell the properties for us, we started to look within our own networks. And as many of you know, we've been working with the Global Investor Alliance with Peter Badger and Karen Williams. They've been visiting our projects, doing due diligence for their own group of alliance members. And as we were having the conversation about 6 months ago, we really started to discuss the possibility of creating a new entity, a distribution entity that would be run by a third party, that would be able to not only list the properties and market them, but really add a value add component to it, which is an education component. And Peter and Karen have been so good at, and they have a wonderful program for anyone who's not familiar with the Global Investor Alliance. It's something that has educated dozens of people around the world on how to become better investors, not only in agriculture, but in multifamily projects, and really any asset that you're evaluating to purchase, whether it's real estate or private equity. So they really were the perfect fit for us, to be the listing agents. And we have partnered with them on this project, and we're planning to partner with them on other projects in the future. But I would like to bring Peter and Karen in now and give you a little bit of background on them. Peter Badger has been working in technology and on Wall Street for the last 25 years, has successfully exited companies in Silicon Valley, and has a wonderful approach to evaluating, very analytical approach, and a very understandable approach to educating people. And Karen, his wife, is also very experienced in the financial services space, and spent the last 20 years, I believe, consulting for some of the big 5 consulting firms. And the team together, they bring such a great approach, and their experience of traveling everywhere. I think this is going to be a better fit for them to come in and really give the delivery on this project from their own perspective, because they have visited this project. They have been there several times, and we really want this to be the story to be told from an investor perspective, or a real estate buyer perspective, which is what they are. So without further ado, I want to bring in Peter and Karen. Peter and Karen, are you there?
We are. Sorry, but our video is stopped by the host. So.
Sorry about that. That's
right.
my mistake. Let me
stop your flow.
It says forbidden. Let's see here. Let me see.
That's right.
So
forbidden fruit.
Let's see here. Okay, why don't you guys go ahead and I'll work on your video.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. No worries. Well, thanks for the introduction, Dax. As Dax has mentioned, Peter and I have been investors now in a multitude of the Farmfolio projects for the past few years. I think the first one we jumped into was in early 2018, and Pietrasanta actually was a piece of that. So we're super excited to see how this has evolved and to take it forward from here. And honestly, business building is a team sport, and these guys are all in every day, boots on the ground, right? And we all have a part to play. It's really about democratizing the access to investing in farmland. This is good not just for the farmer, but for the investor as well. So really the whole virtuous circle benefits from this. So that's where Peter and I come from, is from this standpoint of being investors. As Dax has mentioned, Peter came from a tech background, so he's very data and process driven, very analytical. He did that tech work in mostly kind of trading systems in big banks, so intimately understands the investment side of it as well. And I worked with PwC for many, many years, helping other people take their businesses really to the next level, and then helping small businesses really ramp their sales and marketing. So that's kind of the side at which I've played. But I came from being a farm kid. I grew up on sort of a hobby farm. So I've always had this love of farming. And without further ado, I really want to just kind of get into what we want to share with you today about this El Principio subdivision. So there we are. Hopefully we can all see the next screen. So this is, as Dax mentioned, 30 hectares, this first El Principio subdivision. It's got about 4,687 trees on it across those 30 hectares. So that's, average about 150 per lot. This first harvest, this is unheard of, to buy into titled farmland and be having your first harvest within like 6 months of ownership. So we love this aspect of the project. It's almost never in a turnkey scenario like this that you're able to pick up the farmland and benefit from it without actually being the farmer putting in the hard work. So you can see that the projected yield per hectare over sort of a 5-year average is about 10,981 nuts per year. And this will translate to a cap rate of about 11 to 13%. To give you context, for those of you who have not been part of the Farmfolio family of projects and you're new to Farmfolio, as Dax mentioned, we've got projects that are going on both throughout Colombia and then also in Panama. So you can see noted here at the red dot up in the Monteria region where we've got this first coconut plantation. And this gives you a little bit better view of zoned into Monteria. Here is the entire Pietrasanta farm you can see shaded, and then the El Principio, that first 30-acre portion, which was the first subdivision that was planted. So now you can see how it's all been subdivided. Just as Dak has mentioned, they've already done, this is what developers do, right? They put in the infrastructure, they put in the roads, they put in the irrigation, the sidewalks, if it's residential, whatever it is, right? They put all of that in and they subdivide the property. They do all that upfront, early kind of what they call soft cost work, if you're familiar with the sort of real estate development lingo. So they've put all of that in so that we can all benefit from this. So developer being Farmfolio, doing all the front end work, and then to delineate the sort of tasks or the roles, the manager, the farm manager in this scenario becomes GP Agro SAS, who are the farm team who live in residence there and have been operating this farm since they first started back in early 2016. And then the commercialization arm, that is the LaDonna fruit brand that, again, Farmfolio has worked really hard in the past few years to develop that commercialization channel. And as Peter and I know well from going awry in our first titled farmland investment, you've got to have that commercialization piece. It is critical to your success. So let's talk a bit about the developer as Farmfolio. This is what they've accomplished in just this short period of time since like 2015, when they're just kind of getting numbers started and boots on the ground and finding the right farms to participate in. And 3,000 stakeholders now. That's people like you and me, investors that have benefited from participation in these projects. 17 million in capital has been raised now across these projects. And the impact, 54 million in assets under management now. So we've just been able to make tremendous impact from the hard work, boots on the ground effort that Farmfolio has made in these early years. And it doesn't stop with the farming. As I said, these guys realize that creating value means not just finding the farmland and the good fruit, it means putting all of the pieces together. You've got to have the entire integrated supply chain in place if you are really going to deliver returns for investors that you're projecting. So that's a real critical piece. And it's been wonderful to see the sort of evolution of knowledge and discovery of Dax and Oxford. They started with the farmland piece. Then they were like, this packaging piece makes a lot of sense. Geez, we ought to be doing this packaging in the free trade zone. So with every new project, the new knowledge that we collectively benefit from together as investors it's just amazing. It's really fun to watch. So let's talk about the manager, the GP Agro SaaS part. I wish I could introduce him to you guys personally, because we met him actually last year, shortly after he'd started working on the farm. But Melanio Santana is the head agronomist on the coconut plantation. And he was literally, I love to say this, born on a coconut farm. And he loves it. He really loves it too. He's just so passionate about the sustainability and the organic standpoint by which he approaches the farming of this land. And it really, you can see how it just ignites the whole team to do their best in this plantation and each piece that they have to play in it. So he really takes a precision farming approach. He understands the disease issues that can come up. He understands all the cultivation issues that they need to be aware of, and he's constantly keeping an eye on it. And there are eyes on those trees every single day. So he's taking his multi-generational knowledge and sharing it and just elevating the whole level of that farm team. And in this way, we're able to have an enormous social impact. I mean, think about the skills and the knowledge that the community itself is growing. And this is going to be so much more helpful when it comes to the next round of farmers that are already knocking on Farmfolio's door to say, oh, hey, you know those coconuts? You got any seeds? We'd love to plant them ourselves, right? And so this is, Farmfolio has established the first certified organic coconut nursery in Colombia. So just imagine how that literally is going to seed the wealth for the rest of us as well, as this continues to be pushed out through the rest of the country in the appropriate growing regions. Now you can also see, back to that precision, you can see the picture on the left side here, this third-party tree count. So, Peter and I were really insistent upon this as well in our conversations with Farmfolio. These guys understand transparency. They understand that these are big projects in, foreign lands for most people, and you've got to be on it. You've got to be transparent. You've got to be communicating with people, both the good news and the bad news. We're all smart people, right? We wouldn't be in this game if we weren't, but we deserve to be communicated with transparently and understand what the issues are, because collectively, we trust in the asset manager, but we still want to understand what's going on. There's always smart money in the group that can be of benefit. So we are insistent on having sort of third-party observation and stamp of approval on all that we do here. And again, this is hard lesson learned from Peter and I being burnt where we weren't able to get transparency out of asset managers. So if you look at the chart on the bottom here, I want to just show what this represents, these harvest projections we're looking out through this 10-year period, again, starting 2021. So this winter harvest will pay out to investors by mid-year 2021. You'll be getting your first payout from the yield of your land. Now this represents the projections over the whole 30 hectares of that El Principio. So just for context here. And you can see that 2021 through 2024, we've got these original harvest projections, and then we see some replanting. So I mentioned a little bit earlier, the initial spacing of the coconut trees in terms of optimal growth meant we'd have about 175 trees per hectare. Now, however, in the normal course of farming, you're always going to have a mortality rate. Usually starts from something to do with the seed, and it might start growing and be a seedling, but you get it in the ground, it doesn't survive. So that's typical. So we've had that 10, 15, whatever % mortality rate. We'll be replanting those additional trees in the various lots, and that's where you start to see in 2025, and once those have come up to their full growth. Let me see if we can just mute here.
Oscar, can you mute? Sorry. Good.
So once we come up to 2025, those newly replanted trees that replace the ones that had died in that first round will be coming to fruition and start yielding their fruit. So that's where you see that kick up between 2025 and 2030, increasing that total harvest. So that Farm Owners Association, Dax put this kind of in good context when he was given sort of the analogy about real estate development in general, right? You got the developers that put in the roads, the curbs, the sidewalks, the infrastructure, the power lines, the water, and all that sort of stuff, right? So all of that is done by a developer or a builder. And then you have typically, like, because Peter and I do a lot of multifamily investment, right? Then we have our property managers that are our right-hand team that really make that operation hum and really keep it either making money or losing money. That's what this Farm Owners Association is here to do for the individual farm owners. This is going to make you as an investor a passive investor and make it turnkey for you, because you're going to engage just like if you bought a condo in a development and you had a homeowners association, you're going to buy a lot in a farm development. And then you're going to have a farm owners association that helps manage the relationships and the maintenance of that piece of property. So they're going to administrate the farm management contracts, right? So they're going to be working with GP Agro as the manager to ensure that we're clear about what the expenses are and that those are billed out to the owners as appropriate based upon their percentage ownership, the lots they own, and so forth. They're also going to work with LaDonna Fruit and establish the sign-off, the offtake agreements for the commercialization, for the sale of the fruit. So then they will handle all of basically this transaction piece of it, so that you as the owner are just basically being billed twice a year for your management fees related to the farm management, and then distributing the proceeds of your harvest. Now, the other piece that that Farm Owners Association is going to do is kind of administrate the digital ownership records. So this titling, if you've never invested in the LATAM region before, in Peter's and I's experience, it can be cumbersome and slow. That's why Farmfolio has put a lot of effort in on the upfront piece of this to thoroughly understand it, to have it be subdivided and ready, to have it be, again, fairly seamless for us. Farmfolio is offering the service of being the custodian to hold that digital title for us. So we don't have to pay the transfer taxes on holding it and then transfer taxes when we go to sell it again. So we're allowing Farmfolio to be the custodian of our digital records, and that's going to make it seamless and easier for us as investors. So the communication between owners is the final aspect really of what the Farm Owners Association is going to be responsible for. So they will be responsible for notifying us, all of us, on an annual basis. Hey, here's the annual votes. We're voting on the farm management contract, on the offtake agreement. We want to vote on having maybe an owner's event at the farm, whatever it might be, right? Whatever those typical communications are about the business of our sort of cooperative farming, they're going to be there to provide that seamless communication. So they really are the hub of it, making it, again, as passive as possible for us as lot owners to simply get paid our proceeds twice a year and not worry about the rest. Because this farming stuff, let me tell you, it's hard work. So as I said, the really critical part of this, where Peter and I misstepped our first time around, was not thoroughly understanding the depth of the importance of building that sales channel and building it before you even have the fruit. For these coconuts in particular, I think Éxito and Carula in the internal market here throughout Colombia are going to be the first buyers of the coconuts, because you know, sometimes you get these bonuses as you go along, and we found out that coconuts are damn popular in Colombia just as much as everywhere else. And so it's like, heck, if we can sell these first harvests, you know, basically right at the end of the gate without having to put in the effort, that's great, because we just get the cash flow back in and continue to work and expand the farm for the benefit of all of us. But this is critical. This commercialization piece is the make or break. So the fact that it's already humming and people know this brand, and we've started with the pineapples being the creme de la creme, that everybody realizes the quality of this air freight fruit. And so it's really established us as a strong brand. Final slide I'll go through before we hop into questions is just to kind of sum up the financial model of projections per lot owner. So you have a sense of what you can expect from buying your own farmland and having it be operated by a competent farm manager and sold out into the market on your behalf. So you can see that across the entire 30 lots, the expenses up here in the top right corner, the administration, farm management and supplies, all of the things that it takes day to day to operationally run this farm and the big team that's there to support it is about $72,000. So when we break that down to a per lot over the 30 lots, this is only $2,400 per owner. So that's pretty exciting. That is very reasonable. And this is how we benefit, right? We can't actually have you buy a lot and then be like, okay, well, we're going to farm that one lot. Each individual investor's one lot. That's just not how farming works. That's not how cultivation works. That's not how harvesting works. And that's not how selling works, because you have to, when you create these offtake commercialization agreements, you have to have enough volume that that buyer wants to buy from you. And so this is why Farmfolio is so focused on development and continuing the development piece of this, because they understand for all of us to profit at the maximum amount, we have to create the volume and the consistency of quality so that the market knows that that's what they can expect from us. So again, you'll see in these top lines shows the initial harvest and the replanting. So you see those total harvest numbers starting with on 2021 on the left is 317,000. You can see how it grows to 787. Now those are nuts, okay? So that's just nuts. We're not talking dollars there. And then the offtake contract price there, you see COP, Colombian peso, 1,600 Colombian pesos per nut, okay? So when we translate that, the peso numbers probably won't mean much to you contextually, but look at the US dollar when we do it at current exchange rate. These are the dollars that are coming off this 30 hectares, okay? So 149,000 that first year of commercial harvest that we're not even at full nut capacity quite yet. And then as you see towards 2030, over 370,000. Again, those farm owner association fees, year one, it's gonna be zero, because these guys realize when you've bought your lot, you know, it's pretty much assumed you've already paid that first year's administrative expenses and so forth, right? So that's going to be included in, so it's nice and seamless for people on that first year. And then it's 2,000, and then it goes to that flat 2,400 thereafter. And again, this will be something the Farm Owners Association will keep tabs on annually, and we'll be looking to renew annually and discuss with each of the investors. But you see at the end of the day, the total US dollars there, 2021, nearly $5,000 coming out in profit in a turnkey farm property ownership. Like, I can't even tell you how unheard of that is to be receiving money. I mean, Peter and I are like 5 years into other ones, still waiting for the first penny. So this is fantastic. And as you can see, we start with, you know, a cap rate of about 7.66, and then it continues to climb as we level off in the fruit amount. And we're, you know, again, conservatively, we're between that 11 to 13% cap. So with that said, I want to open it up for people to ask whatever questions they might have. And then I'll have Peter actually go to this go.buythefarm.net. This is the link that you're going to go ahead and reserve your lot, because I will tell you, this is our public announcement, but in the pre-public announcement, about a third of those lots are already gone. We'll only have 30 to start. So I think before I let other people jump into questions.
Yeah, so let me say a few words actually, because I think, thank you, Karen. That was awesome. The context here for us, myself and Karen, is basically while the questions come into the chat box or the Q&A session on your screens, the importance for us is myself and Karen are LPs, limited partners in Pietrasanta. We were in the second round of fundraising. So there was some very patient capital in round one, which seeded the farm. We came in round two, and we have a significant incentive to make sure that this is successful. And so we kind of find there's two types of investor out there. Either the investor who, like us, wants to be engaged with our investment money, wants to help the asset manager wherever we can with our network, with our skills, whatever we can to help them succeed. And there's the odd investor who kind of like just sits back and takes pot shots when minor things go wrong. So it's really important to us as investors to make sure we actually help our investment asset managers across the board, US, internationally, be successful. And so to us, we saw the ability to come in here and help broker these lots as a way to take care of our own capital and our fellow investors in this Pietrasanta deal. And so openly and honestly, transparency is key for us, ethics and integrity. We see a lot of shysters in the international real estate space generally. And so just so you know, with our alliance members and people we work with, we always put our own capital where our mouth is. So we were in the original second round of Pietrasanta for 150 grand of our own personal capital. And we have gone ahead and purchased the first lot in this case. Because as you can imagine, given the original farmland ownership, we were a limited partner. Even though Dax and Oscar, as an asset manager, which is unusual, offer us voting on big decisions with the farm, ultimately the asset manager controls that farm. So we want the ability, personally, myself and Karen, to have that titled ownership, to own a portion of this farm in perpetuity because we believe in it so much. And actually, to Karen's point, the majority of those initial 9 lots that have been reserved in the past 3 or 4 days were from existing investors already in the original private equity raise who actually wanted to buy the land themselves and own that titled farmland in perpetuity for them and their families for income through generations. So I think you can understand where we're coming from our role in this is that, you know, we stand behind our own capital in these deals. And if we can help our own capital improve, then that's why we're here to help Farmfolio broker these lots, expand farm ownership. And we are extremely excited the first time because this is a land purchase. It doesn't come under the normal, accredited investor BS, I would call it, in the US. I am a US citizen, even though I sound British, because we want everybody who has the capability to have access to income from farmland for their long-term cash flow and or wealth building. And so this is one of these products actually which we can finally bring to the market, which is open to every single investor globally, no matter whether the US government deems them capable of assessing this as an investment, because it is not an investment. It is a purchase of land, purchase of a farm management agreement with a farm owners association taking care of the group's collective needs, and that general harvest across those 30 hectares, the proceeds are shared by those 30 owners. So just to give that flavor of what we're dealing with here.
And Peter, you mentioned something important about, we came into Pietrasanta in the second raise. That very early raise is definitely a group of smart and very patient capital. Dax, do you want to speak a little bit to kind of why you guys got to this, like, hey, we ought to be selling these lots, and how is that positive? Not just for the investors buying the lots, but the original Pietrasanta investment as well. Can you kind of speak to that a little bit to help people understand the logic behind what we're doing?
Sure. And great presentation, Karen. The lots concept is something that we've been working on for a while. So it's not something that we just came up with. It's something we've really wanted to do a land sale arrangement for some time, but it was about really building the infrastructure to do that first. We didn't want to go into a situation selling land that we were starting new projects, unplanted projects. We wanted to plant the projects first, and then be able to offer the subdivided lots in a traditional real estate format. So this is the first project that really came on that radar. It's not something that we originally planned with the private equity owners. We got to a point earlier this year, as you mentioned, we've got a lot of patient capital, and, we've been developing this project since 2015, really. Farmfolio seed funded the first 250,000 and later another 250,000 into the project. But we've got some budget overruns from our original capital expenditures on the infrastructure that's been put in place. We put in irrigation system. This is fully irrigated farm as well. We had about a $300,000 or $400,000 cost overrun on our reservoir and irrigation structure. That's a very robust system. It's almost 350,000 cubic meters of water. So, we basically built this whole thing from scratch. This was a cattle farm. And again, we went over in terms of budget. We're towards the end of the cycle, and we just need to inject more capital to add some additional infrastructure upgrades to the property for harvesting and other transportation resources to be able to get the product to a central distribution point where it will then be picked up and serviced. I mean, as Peter and Karen, this, and observing all of the projects that we've done, I mean, having an accounts receivable budget and really just a startup budget when you get to harvesting is important. And it's something that we under budgeted, and with the other cost overruns, we needed to raise some additional capital. So earlier in the summer, in June, we were coming to the point where we wanted to make a decision on whether we were going to do a capital call to the investors or to take a piece of the property and sell it in the lots format. And, for us at Farmfolio, it's something we wanted to do for a long time. So it was a great opportunity for us to bring the lots to market. But at the same time, everybody, several people have been affected in different ways by COVID in one way or another. And, we do have people who have invested significant amounts of money in the project that have been patiently waiting for 4 years, and they've had changes of personal situations and need to raise some additional cash. So this is a way to kill two birds with one stone. We did bring it to a vote. It's not something that we are required to do, but we certainly we want to be going in the direction collectively as a group in any operation that we have. So we put it to a vote, and it was very close. I think it was actually within 10%, almost. I think it was 62-48, something like that, or 38. Can't remember exactly what it was, but it was fairly close in terms of what the collective investor group wanted to do in terms of keeping the lots. And keep in mind, this is the first lot that's scheduled to come to harvest. So it's a very it's the jewel right now of the farm. So it's a little difficult even to part ways with it now. We've spent so much time with it, but it's part of our long-term vision, and I think it's a great opportunity for not only farmland buyers, but for collectively our group. We've invested at this from from a startup phase, so there's valuation appreciation that will be passed on to investors, and but there's plenty of room for valuation increase as well. We were talking about the cap rates on the project of what those are projected to be. We're not factoring any land value appreciation in that. So that's a little bit of the backstory on the liquidation and why we're bringing this particular lot to market.
Great, thanks. So rather than go buy the farm, but not yet, let's answer some questions, and then we'll go through that process towards the end. Probably the sorry, back. Oscar, you got some terrible feedback actually, I think, occasionally. So the first question from Dale: how many owners per lot? There are 30 hectares for sale, and there will be one owner or one individual or couple or entity per hectare and lot. So it has been broken up in smaller portions, but we don't feel we need to sell it in smaller portions because obviously there's only 30, and there's a big demand given this is such a late stage in development, and distribution are happening next year within a year of purchase, which is rare for farmlands, we know. Does the lot owner also own a portion of the infrastructure, wells, and irrigation as well?
That's a yes. So what is on your land belongs to you. The association has the rights to the usage of the water on the property. So that is in the, it's called, actually at a domestic level here in Colombia, it's called a participation agreement. And that is part of the paperwork. So there is no restriction on the water use. It's available to be irrigated in perpetuity. So water usage rights are included.
To that account, for everybody viewing, we have constructed over 490,000 cubic meters of water in the form of reservoir, which is connected to 3 electrical pumps. In addition to the 3 electrical pumps and stations, we also developed that's about 7 kilometers of third line power to be able to power the 3 stations. That's something we did in the early stages to mitigate the long-term cost of diesel fuel plants for the irrigation system.
Yeah, and actually part of this capital, part of the land sale and receipt of capital will be used to enhance the wells around the property. We have some additional locations where we want to place wells that will feed into the main reservoirs and will enhance the property. There's a lot of this funding is for GP Agro, which is really where the sale is going to occur on the tree side, is going to be used to enhance the infrastructure, as I mentioned earlier, at the farm, which will make this a more efficient operation and healthier overall property.
And I think that's also key, because I think from our perspective, as on both sides of the equation, I mean, Melania and the whole GP Agro, the farm management team, are actually farming all 230 hectares in perpetuity. The fact that 200 are owned by some original private equity investors, and the 30 are owned by lot owners, we are all on the same side, or the incentive side, of making this successful. So to Dax and Ox's point, the infrastructure built up around the general farm will be leveraged by all the new individual lot owners. So what is the frequency and months of cash distributions? I know it's semi-annually. What do you think on it from a month during the year?
Sorry, Peter, could you say that one more time? I didn't hear the question.
What is the frequency and months in the year of cash distributions?
Yeah, right now we're at a semi-annual schedule, just to minimize the. I mean, you have to imagine that we've got people buying lots from all over the world, so the distribution of monies needs to be collective and trying to minimize the transactional cost of moving money around. As you also mentioned, most of the sales initially. Right now, the price of coconuts in Colombia is very high. It's actually higher than the export market. So right now, we're going to be selling the majority of the coconuts locally. Oscar, I think your feedback is coming back.
Use a headset, mate.
So, we do have several clients in Europe that are asking us for coconuts on the Ladana fruit side. But until the prices change in Colombia, and actually I think there was another question that was sent directly to me that I can answer related to that. The exchange rate that we're using in all of these, and I'm not sure, I need to verify this with the two of you, because I think you guys put that cap rate presentation together, but we were using 3,800, which is the current rate at the moment. It's somewhere between 3,800 and 3,850 to 1 against the dollar. So we will be sticking to a semi-annual schedule for not only the distributions from the sales, but the billing of the Farmland Association, Farm Owners Association, will send a semi-annual bill for the collective payments. That could at some point get pushed to annually. Right now we're scheduled at semi-annual, but again, that's not going to be due until 1 year after the purchase.
Thank you. So I'm going to answer 3 questions at once because that's how skilled I am. From Dean, Dale, and David. It's all connected. So, is the lot owner's revenue based upon actual harvest from a specific lot or 1/30th of the combined lots? And so the answer is not all lots are the same. You'll have different tree levels of growth, mortality, maturity. And therefore, we are going to combine all the harvest from those 30 hectares or 30 lots and share it in the 1/30th across those owners.
Yeah, and let me just comment on that real quick, because this is an important point. This is a participation agreement. When you buy a lot in El Principio, there are covenants in that participation agreement. So you have to sign a separate participation agreement along with the other 30 lot owners. And you are all collectively agreeing that you're going to essentially work as a co-op and collectively sell your product together as a group to the offtake company, which is LaDonna Fruit. So it is not, it's part of a participation agreement. That's an important distinction that differentiates this from a traditional 1/30th. It's a collective agreement through participation, which is a Colombian document that manages that particular property, and those covenants belong to that real estate project.
And so really, to answer David's question and the same question, is there is no difference between the lots being offered. They are all the same because you're sharing that overall harvest and income from that harvest. And then finally, a question from Dale in a similar, in terms of ownership, does the lot provide each owner with a portion of freehold similar to a condo development? The answer is no. So you own title to your land, and you may do one of 2 things with that. You can let Farmfolio, or GP Agro in this case, be the holder or custodian of that title on your behalf, to make it seamless in terms of buying it with a single contract and selling in the future if you ever decide to sell this to the secondary market. Or you can actually take direct title and pay those transfer taxes to the Colombian government and a small administrative fee. But in terms of a freehold condo, no, I mean, this is, you actually own your land and you then have this participation agreement in the distributions from the sale of those coconuts on that offtake agreement to LaDonna Fruit. So it's the concept similar, but completely opposite, because condo, yeah, it's a different beast, isn't it? Hopefully that answered that one. What tax? Sorry, go ahead.
I've got a couple here that I'm not sure if you were seeing these. I think these may have been sent to me directly. Let me hit a couple of these because these were very early on. There was a question from David regarding, hopefully I answered your question, David, on the exchange rate. We were using 3,800 to 1 on the US dollar. And then he asked to compare and contrast the cap rate versus the IRR definition and meaning. The cap rate, David, is really has to do with the net operating income divided by the purchase price, and that's going to give you the cap rate. It's essentially similar to a yield, just a net yield number, but it's more formalized as the capitalization rate. IRR is going to be your compounded rate of return over a set window of time. And real estate investments typically use cap rate as the measure for not only yield, but also valuation. So when you want to, and that's an important point I think we should talk about, which is the land appreciation value potential. If you look at, I've gotten this question before from some of the other folks that we've just talked to casually about this. What is the long-term property appreciation? Well, if you look at, rural rates in Colombia, rental rates of property, you're looking at 8 to 9% cap rates. This project is, the projection is that it could reach 15% in 5 or 6 years when everything is at full productivity. Well, if the local market cap rate is 8 to 9%, if you take the percentage difference between that 8 to 9% and the 15%, that would give you the valuational increase projection in that property if you wanted to market to a market rate, David. So there is significant upside and appreciation of the resale of the lot. The more consistent the cash flows get, obviously the more valuable the property becomes, and the lower cap rate is needed to justify the sale of the property, which increases your valuation. So that's a long technical answer, but hopefully that answered your question. Another question was, yes, Heinz, I'm not sure if we actually mentioned this. Thanks for bringing this up. The lot price is $65,000 for the 1 hectare lot. David had another question about the water. There are 2 sources of water, David. One is wells and one is the reservoir. We have currently 2 functioning wells at the property. We want to increase that to 4 over the next 6 months with the sale of the property, and that is being used to facilitate all of the lots, as well as Oscar mentioned. The capacity of the reservoirs is 480,000 cubic meters of water, which is quite a large. If we will have some videos and some visuals to send out to everybody after the meeting, but it's a pretty substantial amount of water. The question from Faisal is, are the FOA fees billed to investors or taken out of their sales proceeds? So that's a great question, and we set this up to be direct bill because we're not going to run these as companies. Your individual lot owners, so these will be billed just like a homeowners association where you pay your bill on a periodic basis. Now the bill will include your property taxes, your all of the pro rata share of the farm management bill. So the farm manager, which is GP Agro, will send a global bill to the Farm Owners Association, and the Farm Owners Association will send the bill out directly to the lot owners, and that will be paid directly. It can be paid on credit card, direct payment, whatever method you choose. So it'll be fairly simple, and I think you could even do it on some type of automation at some point. And then the sales proceeds will be paid out just in a flat check. So it keeps us from, it keeps the association from having an expensive record keeping process, and that adds a whole nother dimension of responsibility at the farm management level. We want to keep this very simple. You get billed for what the costs are, and you get the proceeds directly, so you can very easily match that up on your own. Another question, Oscar. I think your feedback is there. You go. Is the current irrigation infrastructure enough to offset the dry seasons? So as we have it right now, the trees are at a young enough age where they don't require larger amounts of water during that period. The dry season in Monteria is typically 3 months. Coconut trees, are very resilient, so they don't really have a death risk during that period. Even if you didn't have any water, there's actually quite a lot of non-irrigated coconut production in the region. So we anticipate anywhere between 6 and 7 liters every 2 or 3 days. And the current water we have utilizing the whole farm, that will last really through the middle of February at what we have right now. So we have about really a 1 month gap, which won't really, you really need about 2 full months to affect production. It's possible that we could have some slower months if there was an extended dry season, but we have already been through both an El Nino and a La Nina year at this farm. And, you know, the El Nino year, Principio lot actually had very, very little mortality. I think we had less than, and this is from the original planting. So now that the trees are mature, mortality is like a completely different scale. It's very, very low, like less than probably a few percent in a situation like that. But we do believe we have enough water to offset the dry seasons, and we'll continue to grow these resources.
Yeah, to that end, just to add something else for Faisal. So look, with 490,000 cubic meters, we're making up for 7 to 9 liters of water that we have to make up for the plants during the dry season. Our original projections are based on 600,000 cubic meters of water. As Dax was saying, part of the proceeds will go to actually robusting our wells to make up for the difference between 490,000 to 600,000 cubic meters of water that will be required once we reach full maturity at years 6 and 7.
Okay, question from Selena. What type of tax document do investors receive annually? My assumption is this is going to be a statement twice a year explaining your distribution amount, and then that is up to you as an individual, depending on your passport, residency, and tax jurisdiction as to how you report that to your tax jurisdiction entity. So, and then at what point in the process of the deal documents, whatever and how many there may be available for review, what milestones does a potential investor need to meet to be able to view this terms and conditions? Let me show you the quick process to purchase. Thank you, Doug, for teeing that one up.
Great segue.
All right, so hopefully you see the go.buythefarm.net on screen, and you know, put in your details, and then you'll be basically sent to this page, which allows you to do 3 things. Firstly, download the brochure. This is the detailed brochure which you can review as a potential investor. Gives you all the details in the presentation we talked through today, and the returns, etc. And then we have our phone numbers and email addresses here. We're available 24 hours a day, mountain time, that is. So if you've got questions, follow up with us. We're happy to answer them anytime you want. And then there'll be a little video here, actually, which is great, because this actually shows the lineage of the farm for 5 minutes and how it was actually begun in the early days, one of our very first visits. It's nice looking back as the original capital investor to see the progress that's been made. And then finally reserve my coconut lot, clicking on here. And so this is going to take you to the Farmfolio website, where you'll see the location and each lot available for reservation. So to confirm our conversation earlier, as you'll see here, myself and Karen bought lot number 1. Some existing investors bought these lots here, and lot 10 through 30 are still available. If you would like to reserve, click on the lot of interest. They are all the same, just from an income distribution standpoint. It'll tell you where it is, and you can then go here and click reservation form. If you have questions, you're lazy, don't call our phone number to put in here, we'll respond to you, or reservation form here. And this will actually take you through a Adobe sign process. Simple process, explain the lots you want, name, address, bit of anti-money laundering information, pocket money. Mention here in the other if you intend to invest via your IRA or Solar 401k, which are great investment vehicles for long-term income perpetuity. And then sign and send up, hopefully, a passport as identification proof. And then what you'll do is that'll go through the signing process. Farmfolio, Oscar probably on behalf of GP Agro SAS will countersign this, send it back. And then at the end of the process, you can click on this, on that signed document, which allows you to put down a 3% deposit. And so to reserve the lot, you pay 3% per lot, which is in this case $65,000. 3% is $1,950. This will come through, and then you'll be able to go through and see the paperwork in detail. Dax, for Doug's benefit, do you want to talk through the different pieces of paperwork he'll get to review at that point?
Yeah, sure. So the documents will be made up of 3 separate agreements. You will have your land purchase agreement. You will have your separate tree purchase agreement. It's actually combined into one, but they're considered 2 different paragraphs, so they're 2 different agreements. And that's because the farmland in Colombia is owned by one company and the tree developments are owned by a separate company. So you'll be buying both as part of one agreement. And then you have the participation agreement, which is what I mentioned of the Farm Owners Association agreement, essentially. And then you will have the choice of whether you want Farmfolio to custodian or manage your title for you. If you don't want to take direct possession of your title, Farmfolio can hold your title for you and provide a title management service so that you don't have the additional minutia of getting your documents. If you buy directly, you will have some additional steps in terms of finalizing the titling process. The title registry office in Monteria will require a signature from you with an apostle, which is not a terrible thing. It's just an extra step that has to be done. And there'll be some transfer fees there. It's 1.9%, I believe. But we can get you more information on that. So those are the 3 different agreements that you will receive. Those will be customized. We don't send those out blank. We will customize them to you, whether you would like to hold that as an individual, a company, or if you're buying it through an IRA or some type of qualified account, we can set that up as well.
And Doug, just to be very clear, the 3% is refundable if you decide not to proceed. There is enough demand. There'll be a wait list, we expect, by the weekend on these 21 remaining lots. So the goal of the 3% is to show intent, bit of skin in the game, and then myself and Karen will manage that document signing process, answer questions as required, and make sure as a property buyer, you are comfortable with what you're signing and why, and you fully understand the property purchase you're making.
There's a couple of follow-on questions here, Dax, from David about the proceeds. Are they considered earned income or passive income for American citizens? And then he already files a Schedule F, so he's just wanting to clarify for that.
Yeah, I can't answer that for you, David. I have an idea, but I'm not really permitted to give any tax advice on the treatment of how that's going to be received by you. So I have to stay away from that. I apologize, but that's a question I would ask for your CPA.
Yeah, and then in relation to that, am I correct that any investment in Colombia must be declared to be able to get proceeds back out of the country? What is that process? I believe that is true. Yes, David, you must declare it to be able to get it back out of the country. Dax, do you want to speak to how the entities from which proceeds will flow for people so that they understand that?
Yeah, and it depends on the method of ownership. If Farmfolio is going to be your title custodian, the Farm Association will send the funds directly to Farmfolio's international company, which will then distribute the funds directly to individuals wherever their domicile is. Same thing with the expense for us. We'll be billing directly from there and then sending the funds to your behalf to the Farm Owners Association and ensuring that the taxes are paid on your behalf. the distributions going back out, if you are owning it individually, the proceeds will be paid directly to you wherever you dictate. That will be coming from a Colombian entity. So depending upon where we're sending the money, there could be a withholding tax on that. I believe it depends on your domicile. And if you have a local Colombian company, David, it sounds like you're familiar with Colombia, we can send it there as well and pay it to a Colombian entity as well. So that will depend on, I believe, where you're located.
And then
Faisal had another question.
yeah, I was going to say, it's worth pointing out that the first initial 9 investors, of which we are one, every single person has decided to leave the custodian of the title with GP Agro SAS. So that points to the flexibility and the seamlessness of doing that. And you have the option at any point in the future to turn around to GP Agro and say, hey, by the way, I'd like to take title now and put in my name in the future. But you know, the flexibility of that.
Yeah, it's important for the resale as well. I think that's something worth mentioning. You know, if your intention ever is to resell this asset, from my experience in buying real estate here, you know, a lot of real estate transactions are sold internationally, and you know, there are a lot of even domestically, there are a lot of transactions that utilize similar title management services, Alianza or fiduciary services, as they call them here locally, where you can actually have someone else hold your title and then resell it without taking, so you don't have the double transfer at the local notary office, because every time you transfer the title, it's going to be, there's going to be a tax at the local title office for transfer. It's not a huge amount of money, but if, you know, if you're doing it twice, it's just eroding your gain on the property. So if you want to be efficient, it's a better route to go, in our opinion.
And then final question from Faisal. Any trees that die, will they be replanted to maintain the 150 to 175 trees per lot? Will there be an issue of cost to the owner of the lot? The answer is no. That is part of the agreement you're coming into, correct? It is,
Yeah.
Faisal. And it's important to note that this farm actually has the only registered coconut nursery in the country, which is an important part of the certification process. And we have really I don't know that we're the only hybrid coconut farm or plantation, but we are certainly the only registered provider of seeds of that, which is very important. And we will be able to replant with the same genetic that was planted originally.
And I want to be very
that's a huge advantage, by the way, because it has really converted us into the genetic epicenter of Colombia. That means if anybody wants to follow a route for exports, they really have to follow our trail and go back to the genetic source, which is located at Pietrasanta, which, by the way, I don't think we have mentioned this to everybody listening. These are Malayan dwarf hybrids, which are very resilient, and they have been meant mainly for coconut water purposes since the get-go.
And sorry, Faisal, for absolute clarity, the answer to your first question is yes. The answer to your second question is no, if that helps. Okay, I think we are done today. So thank you for everybody for your attendance. A good 70 minutes, some great questions, and we are open for reservations.
Excellent. Thanks, everybody. Great job, Peter and Karen. And any questions for us, we can be reached at Farmfolio's website. You can go, or you can email me directly at dax@farmfolio.net.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
everyone. Your great questions. Really appreciate it.
Have a good day.
All right.
Thank you. Good day.